Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
Who we need to shout out from McChampionship London?
Dude, so first of all, obviously, Matt Sperling continuing his ascent. His first top 8, he was out in the first round, in the quarterfinals. His second top 8 went out in the semifinals. True to form, keeping the trend line, he reached the finals this time with what has now become the hero. How far we've come, but
How
Affinity.
How does this happen? Affinity with no Affinity cards.
But Experimental Frenzy, some of the dopest tech,
I love that. So it's weird because even the Affinity deck isn't the Affinity deck anymore. Like Affinity,
No.
Regular old Affinity is now like the retro Affinity deck because people are playing the Hardened Scales Affinity now, which also doesn't have Affinity.
Yeah. Old school, but and obviously got to shout out, Alexander Hayne rocking the Tron and BBD with Humans, each putting up, big finishes. BBD usually saving his heavy hitting for World Championships, and Hayne another nice top 8, building up the resume, and just awesome showing from both of those guys. And then also, shout out to our champion, Eli Loveman, good dude. Understand we got a lot of mutual friends. Great showing from him. Another finish for Humans. So
BBD, world champion, and this is his first, whether you call it a Mythic Championship or Pro Tour Champion, actual regular top 8 for him. And anytime Alexander Hayne is doing well in the world, I'm happy to see it.
Yep. So, but I did want to focus on Standard this week because Where the Spark offers so much. And the Mythic Championship, a lot of sweet stuff there. But at the end of the day, first of all, it was built around the experimental mulligan rule, and that doesn't really translate. And second, the format's going to be so different when Modern Horizons comes up in the near future, and Modern Horizons is going to be legal for the next one, the next Mythic Championship with Modern. So I got a feeling we're going to be hitting a lot of Modern once Modern Horizons starts getting previewed in full force. And for now, we're at a really dynamic time with Standard because there's some sick stuff you can do with War of the Spark. I did want to mention, though, 2 cards from War of the Spark that are kind of notable. A couple just quick hits, modern quick hits from War of the Spark, which obviously wasn't legal at this last Pro Tour, but we've got those cards, so it's almost like they're spoilers for Modern Horizons just because they're going to be changing the format now that they're legal. Some interesting things here. First of all, Karn, the Great Creator, an interesting card both for the purpose of as a hate card, being able to shut off. If you play it, it's like it Stony Silences them. But it doesn't Stony Silence you, so you could actually play it. And then it's also the tutor abilities is very, very powerful potentially in Modern. So I can imagine Karn the Great Creator being, for instance, a Lantern deck might find this an attractive one of.
There's another artifact I think is probably pretty sweet potentially for Modern.
Yeah?
Ugin's Conjurant. What do you think about that guy?
Well, he's not really an artifact. He's colorless.
Oh, sure. I guess Karn is also not an artifact. He's also just...
No, but he would go... Yeah, but he goes in a lot of artifact-heavy decks just by the nature of his text.
Yeah.
Ugin's Conjurant, what do you want to do with that one?
Just cast it for 0. Just a 0. You can play it in decks that want a creature that gets cast for 0 to do triggers for,
Yeah, but those already exist, right?
And, however, one other thing, it's a spirit. Ugin's Conjurant is
okay. That's interesting.
So if you combine this with your good friend and mine from Kamigawa block, the Celestial Kirin, who nukes a casting cost, if you cast a 0 casting cost Spirit or Arcane, I think that you might have an Armageddon stick. Might happen if you're in the market for a 3/3 spirit creature for 4 mana. I mean, I could totally imagine, your opponent's tapped out or whatever, and you're like 4 mana, this guy, Ugin's Conjurant for 0. That's like Urnham-Geddon in one play.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're at a steep bar though with 3/2 for 4 mana in Modern, but it is a 2-card Armageddon.
So let's see some other Modern hits here. God, what's her name? The Planeswalker who doesn't really talk a lot.
I don't know.
Dude,
Let's talk.
She suppresses you from drawing any cards. Narset.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Narset, I think the ability to, it would depend. I mean, maybe there's just enough ways that people are putting cards in their hand that are kind of drawing that it doesn't really matter, but it's at least like a consideration.
Well, I mean, this card is going to...
Interesting draw to.
All right, sorry. Go back to it's a consideration. I think we were talking over each other and I lost you for audio. Just
okay, sorry.
Consideration.
Yeah, it's a consideration. I mean, it's a reasonable hate card depending on what kind of cards people play, and then it's also a reasonable draw to. You know, it's got a fair bit of selection, so I think it's at least possible.
Narset is the kind of card I think might be similar to Meddling Mage in some matchups. Like if you're playing against a conventional Storm deck and you play Meddling Mage on Grape Shot in Game 1, not only are you cutting off their ability to kill you because they might not have another way to kill you, but you're also cutting off their ability to remove the Meddling Mage. I think Narset has a similar thing, which is like if you've got decks that are literally just casting a bunch of draw ones, right? Then but a ton of them in order to storm up. This is like countering a lot of their extra cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. The ceiling is real high. Another card, it's a possibility. I don't think there's a natural home, but there's enough minor things going for it that the sum could be enough, which is Tomic Distinguished Advocate, which 2/3 flying, and we talked about this before, the lands on the battlefield and land cards in graveyards can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. Your opponents can't play land cards from graveyards. So to begin with, it stops Crucible of Worlds, Life from the Loam, Field of Ruin, Ghost Quarter, just various things like that. But now what's really interesting is that it also makes your creature lands have hexproof. Now your Tomic doesn't, but if for whatever, it's at least interesting that any Inkmoth Nexus you might have can't be the target of spells or abilities.
Initially when you were talking about this, I was like, wow, this is going to require a pretty specific opponent. Like that green-white deck that focuses on tons of ghost quartering and running you out of stuff by playing extra lands or restricting your ability to search your library. But maybe the defense of your own creature lands might be enough that it's just a plausible, not a hate
There's a
card,
2/3 flyer.
just like an extra, a little extra oomph.
Right, like who knows? Maybe you could round this out somehow for your humans deck or for some sort of a Death and Taxes light. There's a few different places you could use it, but it's kind of more of an outside shot. So here's an interesting one: Topple the Statue, 2 white, tap target permanent. If it's an artifact, destroy it. Draw a card. So this is destroy an artifact, draw a card that you can also tap something else if you need to.
You could just have it in your deck. I've just thought a lot about this card. I do think that, 2 in an anything for, tap a creature, draw a card at instant speed. I think that's really pretty on the outside of okay. I mean, I played the blue version in like Battle of Wits type decks before because it was digging and then also buying time. But I think if you don't have a pretty corner situation like that, you're leaning very, very hard on that extra oomph against artifacts.
Yeah, to me, it's actually that it's a destroy target artifact, draw a card, and then it has a backup mode of tap target permanent, draw a card. So think of it as like Fire Ice, right? Like this card, one mode is a 3-cost ice. The other mode is Cantrip Shatter.
Do you think of Topple the Statue as a main deck card then? it's got to be a main deck card, right? This is like not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you would. Why I don't think Modern's about putting a cantrip on your removal spell in the sideboard. Like, you have higher impact. Like, you need to have the sideboard cards be either super cheap or AOE.
Yeah.
Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control, I think, is too slow. But the fact that you also get exile target creature with power 4 or greater, so you can get like 2 kill spells that way.
Are you talking about the Wanderer?
Yeah.
I played against the Wanderer in Standard last night. It was a very interesting experience. I think that is probably too slow for Modern, like you said, but I was shocked at how impactful it was on the battlefield against like my mid-range control deck. I was really, really surprised.
Well, so here, my only thinking with the in Modern, you can flicker wisp your Wanderer to reset it.
So you've got like, I mean, I guess it's pretty cool, right? Like, you could even fast reset it then, right? Like, get 2 shots.
When they're attacking it, it's got 1 loyalty left, and they're attacking it, and they have to attack it because she prevents all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control. So, like, this card's like a wrecking ball versus burn, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, against Eidolon too, right? Like, that makes things very, very one-sided.
This card, like, I think this card's like amazing against certain strategies as a hate card. And, like, for instance, this card actually makes life really awkward for a Valakut deck, right?
Wow, yeah. That's awesome, Patrick. I think maybe it's not too slow.
But, like, you can also just kill Primeval Titan.
You can certainly do that.
So, like, if you just have the Wanderer in play, you don't have to worry about them just killing it with Valakut, and you don't die to Scape Shift. And then if they play Primeval Titan, you just have a seal of Kill Primeval Titan.
Yeah, sounds great.
And there's ways you can reset it, and that's to say nothing of, like, I don't know, randomly Cryptic Commanding it or something where you bounce it to reset it or whatever.
I don't even know if you have to reset it, because I think one...
I don't know if you have to either.
It's just insane. It kills 2 Primeval Titans.
It kills Gurmag Angler and Tassiger.
So...
And Tarmogoyf and Siege Rhino.
Yeah, the spot I was in...
And it's Exile, too, by the way. It's Exile.
Yeah, it's a big game. I was playing against, like, a green-white tokens deck that had sided... Like, I won game 1, and they had sided in a bunch of, like, Planeswalkers and, like, kind of higher impact, slower advantage-bearing cards, including the Wanderer. And I was just, like, in a weird spot. I was just like, the static ability on this counters Enter the God Eternals. So I'm like, that's bad. And then second of all, I can't even get a guy big enough to attack it, because the second that I do, he'll kill it with the Wanderer. It was like a really interesting... So, because I had, a damage-based removal card, and so it's very, very tricky to navigate beating that card.
Yeah. And I can imagine the same being true in Modern, actually, like it being surprisingly effective. It's a little slow. But, like, if you have one of these in your board, or even just one on your main deck, and you just board it out in some matchups. Like, for instance, you bring against Jeskai, they just have 4 bolts and 4 lightning helixes and a couple electrolyzes some of the time. And it's not that they can't just Teferi it and get the best of you, right? But, like, it's not like it's dead. You can put it to use. So I don't know.
Oh, I mean, yeah, if they've just got, like, some random, I don't know, helixes or expansion explosions or whatever that they were just going to point at your face, like, it just turns that functionality off.
Or your creatures. It just blanks all of those cards. Because it's actually really hard for a Jeskai deck to get rid of the Wanderer without using something like a Teferi or a Cryptic Command. Yeah. Even Celestial Colonnade is a really hard way to do it.
Oh, because it's so cost prohibitive?
Yeah, and 2 hits. So Teo the Shield Mage is another interesting one, and you've mentioned this one in the past.
Yeah, I think
it's a little shallow, but it's it's at least in the conversation.
I like Teo the Shield Mage for kind of the leyline effect, but in a fair deck, right? So, like, I could totally imagine myself. maybe not myself, but someone who is inclined to do this, like play Llanowar Elf into a Teo, right? Like that seems like something that someone might want to do in some matchups.
So it's a long shot, but I think Gideon's Triumph is not out of the question because, like, both they're like Gideon of the Trials and Big Papa Gideon 4, even Gideon 5. There's 3 different Gideons that already show up in some number. So, like, Gideon's Triumph is like, it's fine. It's not like it's great, but I could imagine the ability to hit 2 being worth it in certain spots. I think it's at least in the conversation.
I think this card is potentially perfectly fine. So it's also effective against blocking, right? So if you've got any of those Gideons that you reference, all those guys swing, right? So you can put them in a blocking situation and then just get the card advantage that way.
Mm-hmm. And then let's see. Contentious Plan is at least an option because there have been already times in the past where people have done things like play Throne of Geth just to proliferate, where you sack the throne because you're playing a blue-black deck and you want to make somebody else's Chalice of the Void go from 1 counter to 2.
Yeah, that's a sweet piece of technology. That
if you just Contentious Plan, you can draw a card. You can get the same functionality you were looking for before, but you can draw a card, plus you can flash it back with Snapcaster Mage. And then besides, Contentious Plan might just be something that's worth considering with all these, like, Walking Ballista, Hanging Your Back Walker. It's. I think this one's not out of the question for something like that,
It's
tight. I don't think you don't do it the same kind of thing. It's not out of the question, though, because you'd have to be in for other stuff than just counters. But the fact that this works with energy, this works with planeswalkers, there's...
How about poison?
We have to... It does.
This is like a shock for a poison deck, right?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. It's true. But it's hard to pull all that together.
Yeah, the sorceryness of this card is a little tough for my imagination. I think at instant I'd be much happier about this card.
So Fibblethip the Lost, definitely going to show up. So to begin with, Fibblethip the Lost is a great chord of call, like a target, right? Because you can get, if you just chord him up, he's so cheap, it's super easy to chord him out, and you'll draw 2 cards, plus have the guy.
I'm in.
And then there's other applications, like, for instance, Neoform. Like, if your deck has 1-drops, it's great to be able to go 1-drop and then Neoform on turn 2 and turn your 1-drop into a Fibblethip and draw 2 cards. It's just a nice option to have. And you're like, well, why do I care about Neoform? Great question. And your Fibblethip will be a 2/2. It'll be a 2/2 and draw 2 cards. So it's already good, right? But then if you Neoform, like take, for instance, an Allosaurus Rider. If you've got Allosaurus Rider, you can convert Allosaurus Rider into Grizzlebrand.
So I think that you should remind folks about Allosaurus Rider, which is a favorite from the Forgotten set that gave us Scred in very
Cold Snap.
Neoform Snap.
Yeah, so Cold Snap has 5 green for Allosaurus Rider. That's a 2+ star, 2+ star. And the stars being your lands, and you can discard 2 green cards instead of paying its cost.
Yeah, so it's a very aggressive alternate casting cost, but it's insanely expensive to cast regularly. But that's advantageous for the combo you're talking about.
Right, and if you're already playing some kind of a Grizzlebrand Nourishing Shoal deck, where you could just have green cards to pitch to Nourishing Shoal anyway, and green cards to pitch to the Allosaurus. I mean,
Allosaurus Rider is a great card to pitch to a Nourishing Shoal, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So I think Neoform, definitely. There's some exciting options there, and if you're playing Neoform, Fibblethip is a must.
So let me just think about this for a sec. If it's turn 2 and you have like UG in play, like you've just got like, I don't know, a forest and a breeding pool or something, and you're just like turn 2 free Allosaurus Rider, Neoform the Allos Rider, Gristlebrand, you're just on like popcorn in this turn 2, right?
Yep.
I think I...
Yeah, you do. It's a big parlay, though, because you need Allosaurus Rider.
Yeah.
And you need the Neoform.
And 2 other green cards.
And you need to have 2 other green cards. And you need to have 2 land that can cast the Neoform. So 6 of your cards are already on a track. And you can have obviously it can be any 2 land for the most part, and it can be any 2 green cards. But it's not nothing. But I think it's so busted that, and remember, you get Summoner's Pact too. So you get Summoner's Pact for your Allosaurus Rider.
See, I think this is pretty.
But you can also Summoner's Pact for that world, the World Spine Worm for your Nourish and Shoal combo for when you're trying to go off with Grizzlebrand.
And then you just got to try to win on the spot, right? If you do all this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you got to just draw your whole deck and be like prepared to discard all your cards to kill your opponent somehow. You know, like for instance, you draw your whole deck and you've got 4 Simian Spirit Guides and you've got Lightning Storm or whatever.
Or
right?
Buried Big Demos or whatever his name is, something like that.
Or, yeah, exactly. You're going to kill him immediately. You got to kill him. That much you got to do. I don't think you can wait to untap.
I mean, that is a really, really attractive thing that you're talking about, though. Like, it's just so powerful. It's kind of like a 2-card combo, but the Allosaurus Rider has its own 3-card combo that's required.
Well, and it's nice that Summoner's Pact is a green card for your Allosaurus Rider, too, if you need, right? And the fact that you can, like, you have to get either Summoner's Pact and Allosaurus Rider, either one of those, just to get you started. So you have 8 shots at that part of the combo, and then you just have Neoform. But there's got to be some redundancy. You know, there's going to be some other ways that you can try to pull this off.
Would you play like all the super cheap like G and G1 cards like Traverses and Commune with Natures, things that like can help dig you to either lands to help cast your Neoform or creature redundancy that are also green cards that you can potentially pitch to Allosaurus Rider?
It's possible. It's just I worry about tutors that don't find Neoform because Neoform is the bottleneck.
Yeah, so tough. I mean, Allosaurus Rider is. I mean, I guess it's way easier to get Allosaurus.
Well, here's like there's other things you can do about Allosaurus Rider. Like for instance, what do you think about Manamorphose?
I mean, I think Manamorphose is one of the most underrated cards. I mean,
like that's a great way to pull off your green card, right?
Yeah, and it makes blue if you need it, right?
Right. And by the way, you can do it as a backup victory. It's not that you can't get Grizzlebrand this way, but something else you may want to try is the fact that if you Eldritch Evolution your Allosaurus Rider on turn 3, or on turn 2 if you had like some birds or something, right? You can't go get Grizzlebrand because it's got to be exactly 2 more, which makes it 9. But you could go get like Iona or something, right?
You're probably going to win if you have that. That's pretty good.
So like, there's some things you can do. But I think that's like the most exciting for the person who wants to break it.
It's at least something new and different, right? And clearly powerful, right? Like we're talking about a new, potentially, lethal combination for turn 2.
Yeah, I think it's super, super, super fast. The big thing is going to be how can you find Neoform? So another option that you may want to consider is Glittering Wish. Glittering Wish gives you a 2-mana tutor that can reliably like if you just play 3 Neoforms in your main deck and 1 Glittering Wish in your sideboard.
1 Neoform in your sideboard and 4 Glittering Wish.
Yeah, sorry, 1 Neoform in your sideboard and 4 Glittering Wish in your main deck and 3 Neoform in your main deck. It slows you down because you don't win until turn 3. But you might want Glittering Wish anyway as a way to get hate cards off the table or play with disruption. Plus, Glittering Wish is a green card for your Allosaurus Rider count. Like you really need every card to be green as much as you possibly can. And Glittering Wish is that future start card that's green-white, sorcery. Choose a multicolor card you own from outside the game, reveal that card and put it in your hand, remove Glittering Wish from the game. So, to me, Glittering Wish seems like the one that jumps out at me. Plus, you can go get like Borgamos or whatever. You can go get your kill card, whatever the thing is, right? Like, there's going to be a lot of value to a 2-mana tutor for such a deck.
Oh, I think that it doesn't slow you down that much at all. I mean, you're still talking about being able to win the game on turn 3.
Right.
There's like a ton, like humans, or probably actually even more. Like humans can at least try to get you with like a freebooter or a meddling mage or something like that. But like Burn or most of the Eldrazi decks or Affinity, like if you just cast the Glittering Wish on turn 2, they're just cold, right?
I mean, I don't know what they're going to do in time. They could play the Thought-Knot Seer, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, they could potentially play the Thought-Knot Seer, and if you went first, it's going to be pretty hard for them to resolve that. I mean, not impossible, right? They could have a Simian Spirit Guide or something, but like Affinity, I think, is super cold. I think Burn is cold. I think Humans is probably cold. That's what it seems like to me.
Sure. So, to me, as long as we're remembering that, rule number 1 is we're going to need to play about however many green cards you're thinking that we need to play, we probably need to play more than that. Because I cannot stress enough how much it's going to be so tempting to count Neoform as one of your green cards, but you're just most of the time not going to be able to pitch it.
I mean, you have to have 2, right? And you probably have to be playing against blue.
And Allosaurus Rider, you'd have to have 2. And Summoner's Pact, you'd have to, Like, it's just, there's a lot of things that are kind of accounted for.
See, that's why I was thinking about playing, like, the 1 casting cost green tutors, because then you can cheat on land. And you're transforming your land into cards that you can pitch to Allosaurus Rider.
Dryad Arbor is a green card.
Is it? I always get confused with that one.
I thought so, but who knows? Let me see. So other cards from the set for Modern, though, and I do think that's a super exciting one that we're going to want to be keeping an eye on, but just there's a bunch others, too, for the set for Modern. Flux Channeler. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, proliferate. To me, this just seems like there's some potential to storm off here. Like, I could imagine a deck that uses Contentious Plan and Flux Channeler that just goes bonkers with Proliferate with, Mox Opal and Springleaf Drum or whatever.
My thing on this is, like, you already have to have something good. And then it makes that thing that was already good potentially a bit better, right? But I don't know, I'm not that...
You're not buying?
I'm not scared. Like, other things I look at, I'm like, I'm terrified of this thing.
Okay.
Right? It's a 2/2 for 3. Like, it's just like, if you look at some of the more busted combo decks in the history of large formats, like Cephalid Breakfast, for example, could kill you on turn 2. And Patrick Sullivan used to always say to me, that deck is very bad against, and then he would just name a card in every deck, right? Like Swords to Plowshares, Lightning Bolt, Grim Lavamancer. Everyone can interact with it. And so, yeah, it can get you, but, like, you can get it too.
Okay. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. So people already from time to time use the Laboratory Maniac. And Jace, Wielder of Mysteries is a harder to cast and costs 4 instead of 3. But it's a pretty potent, like, I mean, the fact that you're, instead of being a 2/2 do nothing, it's a card draw spell.
Could we just use Lab Maniac in your Allosaurus Rider deck? That seems like an easy way to win.
I don't think so. I think it's hard. Yeah.
Bori Big Moros is easy.
I think coming up with blue mana is hard.
We're a blue deck.
Maybe it's not. We don't have any mana. It's the second turn.
All right, so how do those...
We got to win with Spirit Guides or something.
Okay, so you have to use... I mean, I guess you could use...
Or Shoals,
you could
whatever.
use Spirit Guides to trigger a Manamorphose, I mean, is that too crazy? I mean, we're drawing like 30 extra cards.
But then you might die because if it's at the bottom of your deck, like, I don't know. We'll have to see.
I got you.
It's possible, but, there's going to be a lot of different possibilities for how to draw cards there. Historically, people don't usually win with Maniac there. They win with some kind of a red card, but we'll see. But Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, Outside Chance, it's probably too wishy-washy at both jobs, but God Eternal Kefnet. So I think God Eternal Kefnet is one of the most underrated cards in the set for Standard. This card is amazing. This card is like a 10.
I was thinking about this card like in replacement of slots that are currently devoted to cards like Crackling Drake or Niv Mizzet. What do you think about that? Like that just
sure.
You just slot not like in a Drake's deck or even how Niv Mizzet is played in some Drake's decks. More like how Crackling Drake is sometimes played in a Jeskai deck.
I mean, I'll go a step further. I think that God Eternal Kefnet should just be played in Dimir, Izzet, Jeskai, Grixis, all of that. I think you can play God Eternal Kefnet in your Nexus of Fate deck. It's great to reveal Nexus of Fate to God Eternal Kefnet. One of the things I didn't fully appreciate about God Eternal Kefnet until Jerry put me onto it is that it works on both players' turns. You can opt on your opponent's turn and trigger it. And first you get to look at the top of your deck and see if this is something dope, and if it's not, put it on the bottom, and then see if that's dope. So you actually, instead of just drawing an extra card 40% of the time, if you opt, you're going to not only draw a card for opt with Scry, you're also going to have a 60% chance a 64% chance of drawing an extra card on your opponent's turn, and it costs 2 less. And you only spent 1 for the opt, so it's like it actually costs you -1 mana when you get the full value. And
it's a 4/5 flyer for 4 that is very hard to kill.
Right, and so that's in Standard. I think it should just be played in everything. In Modern, I think there's a lot tougher of competition. I mean, you're up against like Jace the Mind Sculptor, for instance. But it's easy to draw cards on your opponent's turn for cheap. And then, so like you want to pair it with stuff like Thought Scout, anything that's a 1 mana cantrip, or Manamorphose for that matter. But I think that if, like for instance, it's probably crazy, but you could play a Time Walk deck, a Time Warp deck with God Eternal Kefnet. But I think the real thing you would do is just play it as a one-of alternate victory condition in some random Jeskai deck,
Is this good with like cards like Treasure Map and that kind of stuff? It seems like it would be good there because it's such a cheap way to draw.
Well, in Standard, yeah. Yeah, I don't think you want to do it with Treasure Map in Modern. It's just too slow. But Sculptor is a great pairing with God Eternal Kefnet because you can put back your top 2 cards of your deck and make the top card the perfect thing to copy and flip so that you're triggering God Eternal Kefnet continuously. So like if you're playing some kind of a Jeskai or a Miracles deck, I think God Eternal Kefnet makes a great one of victory condition, or at the very least a sideboard plan.
Yeah, I actually, just listening to you talk about it, it seems to me more and more attractive as a main deck card. I have it in some sideboards now, and it just seems awesome. Because it's like, a lot of the time you don't play certain kinds of cards that are good even when you're bringing them in a wide variety of matchups because they make your opponent's cards good in like game 1. But this card doesn't really have that problem.
Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't. It's a little slow. That's why I don't think you want to play too many of it. But no, I think it's good. I also think you can only play so many 4s, and like it's tough when Jace and Cryptic Command are legal, and Jace works so well with it. So definitely want to keep the numbers kind of low, but
in Standard, do you think this card is directly in competition with like Chemistry's Insight, or do you think it's in competition with some other type of card?
Well, it's in competition with all cards that cost 4. It just works well with them. Like it works really well with Chemistry's Insight.
Yeah, the thing that's funny to me is I often like to play cards like Rekindling Phoenix in decks other than, red aggro or red midrange. So like you often see Rekindling Phoenix in Jeskai Control, for example. It seems to me God Eternal Kefnet is just much better than Rekindling Phoenix for whatever purpose a Jeskai Control deck used to be playing Rekindling Phoenix. Right? Like
yeah,
it's nearly as durable. It's arguably more durable. And
I think it's more durable.
Yeah, and it has it's a way better defensive creature. It has the same power, and there's all that other text. I mean, I think maybe this is just. I think you're right. I think maybe this is the most underrated card in the entire set.
It's also notable how well it works with Jesguy's sweeper package. You see, in Jesguy, first of all, obviously, Deafening Clarion is great with this, right? It takes advantage of the life link. It lives through it. You could really want a Deafening Clarion and then put the Deafening Clarion back in your hand. There's just a lot to like there. But also, if you use the new sweepers, for instance, Time Wipe, return a creature you control to understand and destroy all creatures. So if you Time Wipe, it saves the 2 mana, so you just pay 3, and you get to save your Kefnet. You don't even have to put it back into your deck, versus like a lot of other sweepers would actually kill your own creature.
It's even great with Solar Blaze.
Exactly. That's where I was going to go next. Solar Blaze, because it's a 4/5, it actually lives through it. So, but in as far as in Modern goes, I think you're going to, first of all, you really appreciate the 2 mana. Second of all, it's easy to copy things. Third of all, you have more control over the top of your deck. And I just think this one's going to surprise some people. Plus, it's not like Zombie, Legend, and God aren't all positive attributes. So, yeah, this is one to watch.
Oh, I think this is just I have gone from I wasn't thinking about this card to I think this is one of the best cards in the set now, just from what you've said just now. And I think
it's a top 5 card in the set.
I feel kind of dumb because 2 of the main decks I've been testing were certainly capable of casting a blue card drawing spell at 4 or more mana, and neither one of them played God Eternal Kefnet.
I think you really want to make sure you're playing God Eternal Kefnet in decks that are like Augur of Bolas decks. Like if you have enough sorcery as an instance that Augur of Bolas makes sense, then God Eternal Kefnet makes sense.
I mean, I
think if you can't support Augur of Bolas, you probably can't support God Eternal Kefnet.
I think one of the decks I was testing literally had Augur of Bolas as its only non-instant sorcery in the main deck.
Then Kefnet's probably amazing. But yeah, I think you really I think he's incredible, but I think you have to try more than people realize, because not only do you need to have as many hits as Augur of Bolas, you don't get to count certain hits like Sinister Sabotage, for instance.
Yeah, but I think it's one of those cards that even if you're drawing 1 extra card every 3 cycles, right? Don't even worry about you get 2 per 1
you only
cycle.
get that one. Yeah, but that's still, you have to play 20 in order for that to be true. And that's why I was talking about the Augur of Bolas thing. Obviously, it's even better if you're playing 30, right? But if you're only playing 20, you're only getting 1 every 3 cycles.
But I think maybe just not. I mean, I don't know how much you want to lean into God Eternal Kefnet. I think it's super plausible to play a control-based deck that in game 1, its interaction package is more based around hand destruction. Whether it's
super agree.
Yeah,
super agree. And that's part of the reason I love God Eternal Kefnet so much in Grixis, is that I think that Grixis works great with Thought Erasure and possibly even Duress, and God Eternal Kefnet is just so much better suited for a tap-out control deck.
Yeah, I just caught myself just thinking about this. I was playing Disinformation Campaign last night, which I guess is not eligible for Augur of Bolasing. But that was just, I was thinking you're Thought Erasuring them, you're triggering that into Disinformation Campaign and vice versa.
Discovery Dispersal is another really good one with God Eternal Kefnet.
Oh,
and I think you can play...
Awesome.
Yeah, both ways, because the cheap way lets you get a cheap way that you can trigger God Eternal Kefnet on your opponent's turn, and the expensive way is actually just a dope option for when you use God Eternal Kefnet to flip it.
Yeah, sure.
So another card for Modern, I think it's kind of a long shot, but Jace's Triumph with Jace Belair.
That is a long shot. Why do you like this one in Modern?
Just because Jace the Mind Sculptor and Jace Belarin means that you're really playing with Jaces, and it's a 3-mana draw 3. So if I were playing a turbo... Imagine if I played... And this deck hasn't existed in a while, but imagine if you're playing some deck that just has 4 Jace the Mind Sculptors and 4 Jace Belarins and a lot of taking extra turns.
How am I... I mean, how in Modern I'm taking extra turns? What's the...
With Time Warps and stuff.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's probably bad, but it's not a 0.
So the reason that I'm a little skeptical on this is because even when we were talking about Nissa's Triumph a week or two ago, you were like, hey, if you have a Nissa, then I guess that's cool. But you got to be in it for the GG, just, get a real cheap, fast 2-for-1. And if there's a deck that's in it for that, then maybe you can get the extra with the Nissa Planeswalker aspect. But I don't know. I think if I've got a Jace Beleren even in play, or certainly
Probably.
Like, I just don't want to cast this card. I don't care if I'm drawing 3 cards for 3. I could do that anyway for 0 mana.
Probably. Let's see. It's probably not right, but Narset's Reversal is so novel. It's at least, I'd want to think about it. I don't know where you use it or why, but it's really interesting to Narset's Reversal in counterspell fights, because it's better than the Remand experience, right? If you counter something, your opponent plays something and you counter it, if they counter your counter and you Narset's Reversal your counter, you get to get your counter back, but you also have your counter on the stack.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's really good in a counter fight, but so are a lot of things. So
I mean, the Remand experience, as you're talking, was pretty awesome, right? When you were in a counterspell fight back in the day. But where Narset's Reversal really, I think, shines is Ancestral Visions.
Oh my God, is it good there too?
I mean, you get their Ancestral Visions and then quadruple time walk them. That's insanity.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Spark Double is a modern consideration for the combos, which is the 3 blue 0/0 clone variant. So you get to copy one of your creatures or planeswalkers, and if it's a creature, it gets an extra +1/+1 counter, and if it's a planeswalker, it gets an extra loyalty. And then it's also just not a legend. So Spark Double can be a part of certain combos involving Jace Cunning Castaway, and there's some weird corner case things you can do. But I don't know for sure what its home is. It's just that it's a novel enough effect, the copying a planeswalker and so on. So it's at least something to keep in mind for Modern, because you don't normally just get to copy, any of the various Rals or whatever, or Saheeli Rai or whatever.
All right.
So let me see. Does where did it go? Bolas's Citadel. So it's only 1 mana more than Ad Nauseam. But as long as you can just reset the top of your deck whenever you're going to hit a land, and I could imagine your deck just doesn't have very many land in it, right? But if you can get Bolas's Citadel in play, you probably win immediately.
In Modern.
In Modern.
So this
certainly in Legacy. So Bolas's Citadel in Legacy is it's an interesting thing, because in Legacy you can already just win if you Ad Nauseam, but you could play with a different kind of deck if you were playing Bolas's Citadel. My question is, in Modern, can you win? Because in Legacy you can win with Ad Nauseam immediately, partly because you just have so many zeros and net mana cards, whereas in Modern, when you Ad Nauseam, you typically have to actually set it up with something like an Angel's Grace. However, I think with Bolas's Citadel, I would imagine that it might be possible to win just straight up. You don't even have to play the Angel's Grace or anything. You just put Bolas's Citadel in play.
And then you're just... Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, are you not worried about getting stuck on double lands ever? Is that the...
Well, I think what you need to do is, first of all, not play extra land that you don't need. Second of all...
go super lean.
No, but not necessarily. That's not the only thing you can do. So let me give you an example. Every fetch land is a shuffle. Every cantrip that you can play out of your hand is a reset. Every time you play a library manipulation spell like a Serum Visions, you get to leave your deck in a better state than you started with. And I don't know if you can pull it off, but if you have, like, take, for instance, basically every one of those dinky artifacts from the Lanterns deck. If you were playing, like, Lantern and you had Bolas' Citadel, you'd never stop. You could just keep using Lantern-type effects, like not Lantern itself, but any of the Prixis or anything, you know?
Oh, because it's just cheap thing.
Or Ghoul Caller's Bell.
And then tap the Ghoul Caller's Bell to clear the top, and then just keep going in case you ever get brickwalled, right?
Right.
Okay.
And so, you know, and maybe you have cards that let you play extra land. I don't know. It's another question. So it's a tricky one to pull off, but I could imagine it being there's a chance of building some crazy combo deck with it.
So Bolas' Citadel, I've actually seen some folks playing it and posting deck lists, and I've actually played against it myself both on MTGO and Arena already in the past week. People seem to be playing it in Standard in just kind of a Golgari shell. Just like Golgari with four Bolas' Citadels. And like the thing that's weird is like part of it is just like it's just a regular deck. Usually they're playing like the full 4 Wild Growth Walkers and then playing like even more Explorer guys than usual. So they might be playing Seeker Squire as well. And then the only thing that makes it a little bit weird, because the rest of their deck is just a regular Golgari deck. They just happen to have Bolas' Citadel, but they might play Revival Revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Revival Revenge is a split card, and so they need a little white mana if they want to cast Revenge. But Revenge is the 6 casting cost side says double your life total, target opponent loses half their life total rounded up. So even if it takes you a ton of life to flip the Revenge with Bolas' Citadel, your life goes down, but then it gets doubled anyway, which I think is pretty cool.
Sure.
And then your opponent loses half their life, even if they're at 20. They're going to go to 10, which is like lets you kind of one-shot them with Bolas' Citadel if you have enough permanents in play.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, no, that's some.
And like all those Explore guys give you just a ton of like looks at the top of your library, right? So, you know, you're going to hit the land drops that you need, hopefully, and then, you know, find the key card. It's just going to be there for you.
So I was thinking, I mean, that all sounds good for Standard. I was thinking, though, that we might be able to exploit just how crazy this is with cards that have a low CMC. Like, for instance, if you have Bolas' Citadel, you can play Summoner's Pact, no problem, right? And you're like, oh, no big deal. You can do that anyway. You'll still have to pay the thing if you make it to the next turn. But Summoner's Pact gives you a shuffle anyway. And if you play lots of packs, maybe you're playing some kind of a hive mind deck. But alternatively, if you had Bolas' Citadel and, I mean, I don't know if there's any good ones in the space, but something that the casting cost is really fake the other way. Like, for instance, Evermind doesn't even have a cost, so it's actually just a free roll with Bolas' Citadel. And I don't know if there's any good example, if there's any good, you know, it costs 1, but normally it's actually much more. But anyway, just
yeah, I'm just thinking if you've got like mad cantrips for sake of argument, right? You're the Serum Vision, Thought Scour, Opt guy, right? We already have models for that, and I think that the models that we have that are existing in Modern, if you're going to go that direction, they already work, and I think they're less fragile than Bolas' Citadel, right? Like Bolas' Citadel has to put things on the stack, and it's an artifact in play.
Okay, well, how about this? And I know obviously we can't play with Sensei's Divining Top, but if you were to imagine Sensei's Divining Top with Bolas' Citadel, that's an intense combination, right?
That's it. If you have 2, that's it, right?
What do you mean 2? What if you have 1?
Oh, wait. Yeah, I have Bolas' Citadel. Yeah, that's just it. Yeah, I guess it's like one life at a time. You're just going to draw your deck, right? That's insane.
Right, like you get to play with Yawgmoth's Bargain if you have Sentinel, if you have Sensei's Divine Top and Bolas's Citadel. But you also can just play any cards for free, so it's not like that. You don't have to do it. You can just, every time, what you do is you play the top off the top of your deck. Now you get to see what your top card is. You can decide to play it for free with Citadel by paying life, or if you just don't wanna, you can just top and put the card in your hand, and then pay 1 life, and then now your top is back in play. So what you end up in the spot of is that you both have Bolas's Citadel and Yawgmoth's Bargain. You have like literally just both. So I don't know. I mean, that's more of a legacy thing, but like I wonder if there's something we can do to get a weaker version of Sensei's Divining Top for Modern. You know?
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, just can't top that. Yeah, I would be into that. I would at least be into trying to beat that. But that sounds very, very powerful.
All right. What about Command the Dread Horde? Choose any number of target creature and or planeswalker cards in graveyards. Command the Dread Horde deals damage to you equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards. Put them onto the battlefield under your control. So it's probably too slow because 6 mana plus whatever setup you did. But like, Buried Alive plus this should be a win, right?
Yeah. I mean,
like you can just go get like Kiki Jiki and Deceiver Exarch and anything else you want.
But it's not just the mana, it's also the life, right? Like, so you have to have a certain amount of life when you're casting the Command the Dread Horde.
Yeah, but not that many. Like, what, 8? I guess you have to have 9 life.
I mean, I don't know. So here's a question. Is there a way to play this in a format where you're much more likely to have more life at that point, like in Standard? Do you think that there's a good spot for that? Like, and not just getting an advantage. Like, I mean, like, drop the hammer when you cast Command the Dread Horde.
Maybe. It's just so hard because Command the Dread Horde is also competing with Liliana. In Standard, Liliana seems really good to me. Dread Horde General. And then, like, you're also competing implicitly against Nico Bolas 5 and Commence the End Game. And, you know, there's just a lot of expensive, powerful cards. So it's tough to have to pay so much life.
So just on some of those notes, I've actually done some playing Standard recently since the new sets have come out and have come up with some observations that I think might be interesting. One card that you talked about a few weeks ago that I just glossed over, even though you were thinking about it a lot when we were talking about Feather, was 10th District Legionnaire, which is RW for a 2/2 human soldier. It has haste, and it also says whenever you cast a spell that targets 10th District Legionnaire, put a +1/+1 counter on 10th District Legionnaire, and then scry 1. So it's like a permanent buff in addition to whatever buff you get from the spell that you cast.
It stacks.
My God, is this card insane in a Feather deck? I mean, it's. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Like even if you don't have the Feather, like you're just playing a Feather deck. So you know how like sometimes we're like, oh yeah, that would be good, but you have to make sure you draw your blah. Like 10th District Legionnaire is like Feather Junior at best, but it comes out on turn 2, and it is wild. Like all that stuff that you were talking about, like this thing fights this thing, or deal 1 to this and deal 4 to that kind of stuff, is awesome with 10th District Legionnaire. It gets big, it's killing their stuff, and it already had haste. Yeah. It's really, really good. I was surprised at how dominating 10th District Legionnaire plus Feather was. And to that end, I was really, really down on the concept of aggro decks. And you're like, hey, what about Dreadhorde Butcher? I'm actually back around. I think like not mono red like we've been seeing it, but maybe like whether it's a deck like Feather and 10th District Legionnaire or like a red deck that is splashing for Dreadhorde Butcher. I just think like so many of the decks that I'm seeing people are going to be fielding in the early tournaments of this format. If they were focusing on 3 and 4 casting cost planeswalkers, it'd be one thing, but they're all playing like a ton of 4, 5, and 6 casting cost planeswalkers. And I mean, like, they're just going to get shredded by cards like Dreadhorde Butcher and Risk Factor. So I'm back on that train. I think that might be a thing to do. And then lastly, I have played a bunch of the amassed stuff, and my results have been really interesting, I'd say. You were right about how many eggs you want to put in one basket. Cards like Conclave Tribunal are really bad for you. You're like, oh, their deck is so low power. And they're like, you have no cards in here. They're like, Conclave Tribunal, you're 24/24 lifelink. Oh, I am now dead to the board. That's happened. And I was actually mildly disappointed in Commence the Endgame. Commence the Endgame is good.
Yeah, told you.
No, like the guy I make is just like a 3/3 sometimes because I played my spells. Yeah. That was the thing that was a little disappointing. And I was like, I don't like that. I always thought he was going to be an 8/8, but nope. Nope. Sometimes he's a 4/4 or something.
Yeah. Sorry. One other thing you can do with Command the Dreadhorde, by the way, in Modern, and by the way, that is good stuff for Standard. I feel like there's going to be a lot to dive into there, but on the Modern tip, Command the Dreadhorde, you can get back a lot of zeros. What if you played some sort of a Disciple of the Vault deck with like lots of zeros and stuff? Like maybe there's something you do where you kill them that way.
But how do you get all that stuff in the graveyard first?
No idea.
Like I feel like if you can get stuff in the graveyard, you're just going to win anyway.
So Davriel, Davriel, Rogue, Shadow Mage. I want to put this one out there because if Reed Duke can just play the rack, this is like the rack, but you get the discard spell stuff on the way in. It's kind of a long shot, but I could imagine one of these in some of those smallpox decks, you know?
Oh, I think that this might be okay in multiple places, not just the smallpox style. I mean, actually, separately.
Isn't this just so much worse than Liliana?
But smallpox doesn't affect planeswalkers, right?
I know. But how many 3s can you play in your smallpox deck?
Yeah, but what if you elfed out Davriel? Like, what, is that stupid? Like,
I think it's way worse than Liliana.
Yeah, but it's just different from Liliana. Like, you know, people.
I don't think it's different.
People play this Liliana and this Liliana. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't buy it.
They're not even sure which Liliana they want to cast on turn 3.
And they're all better than Davriel.
I agree with you, but he's also the rack, and he's way worse than Liliana as a discard machine, isn't he?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Him as a one-of, you would still play 4 Liliana of the Veil in your smallpox deck, but I could imagine playing 1 Davriel in your smallpox deck. You got to win with something. The Elder Spell. Can we get the Elder Spell in there for some sort of a combo kill?
In what format?
In Modern? In Modern.
I mean, you still need Bolus, right?
Well, it depends. I'm just about by a combo like trigger anybody's ultimate. If you just have Fairy with the Elder Spell, all you have to do is hit 2 walkers, and then you get to ultimate to Fairy.
See, I feel like the Elder Spell has like this giant asterisk next to it, which is it works better when you're killing your own stuff, which is counterintuitive, but you just can't rely on other people to have stuff.
No, I'm not talking. So assume your opponent has nothing, and you're just playing a 3-color walkers deck that has Teferi and maybe at least one other planeswalker that you would like to ultimate. And because if your deck just has some Jace the Mind Sculptor and Gideon and Elspeth and Teferi and Liliana of the Veil, like there's a bunch of super dope planeswalkers. You could just have a bunch of really good planeswalkers in your deck, and then you have a copy of the Elder Spell to surprise people as part of your anti-combo plan, where you just the Elder Spell and trigger one of your ultimates of one of your planeswalkers.
And then probably win because you got the ultimate off.
Right. Or definitely win, depending on what the ultimate is.
I think that is challenging for Modern. It's just so much mana has to get spent. You know, I feel like Modern is just
That's
like
true.
Even if people are spending a lot of mana, they're doing it in such a compressed number of turns. And it's always weird to me how reliant you are in Modern on just drawing off the top of your deck or what the configuration of your opening hand was. There are many good cards like Serum Visions and, you know, that whole kind of cheap card drawing or cheap selection stuff. And it's so rarely used for the purpose of just like fixing your hand or sculpting your game, and so much more used for like a tonnage of abuse that you're putting against the rules.
Yeah, it does seem like you're going to have to spend so much mana before you get anywhere with that card. So it's tough to have that just be the precursor. And then it's not even just automatically win, it's just ultimate somebody. So here's kind of a surprising one. What do you think of Kaya's Ghost Form?
Kaya's Ghost Form. Tell me what you want to do with this card. That is surprising to me.
Okay, so let's suppose that, like, let me give you a few examples. Let's say that you had a creature that let you play an enchantment on it, like a Zerg. Well, no, that, like, for instance, when it enters the battlefield, play an aura on it from your graveyard. And I forget right now, because I know there's, like, I was thinking about stuff along the lines of stuff like Sovereigns of Ostelara or any of the various different sort of tutor-up ones. But if we had such a card that was like, when this enters the battlefield, play an aura from your graveyard on it, you would go infinite with any sack outlet.
Oh, you could generate infinite triggers, you mean?
Yeah.
Right, so, like, let's say there's such a card and you had Kaya's Ghost Form in your graveyard, you play it, Kaya's Ghost Form goes onto it, if you have a sack outlet, you sacrifice the guy, and then Kaya's Ghost Form returns it, right?
Yep.
Directly to the battlefield, and then it buys the Ghost Form back.
Right.
I see.
So, I don't know. I don't know that there's such a card. It's tough. But, like, you know, like, for instance, Academy Researchers does it from your hand. And then, like, Auramancer puts it in your hand, but you're losing a mana from Kaya's Ghost Form. And then Aura Touched Mage gets it out of your deck, so you only get to do 4 of them. And then Boonweaver Giant costs 7, but you only get to do it out of your deck.
I mean, I don't know. Is there some sort of Paradise Mantle thing that we can do that will let us just get a B from every creature that we get out there?
I mean, we could sack our creatures for a mana, like 1 mana of a colored mana. I don't know. The best one, I think, has got to be Iridescent Drake. 3 and a blue. 2/2 flying. When Iridescent Drake enters the battlefield, put target aura card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control attached to Iridescent Drake. And
that sounds exactly like what you want.
No, but it's only legal in Legacy is the problem.
Okay.
So, like, if you have Iridescent Drake with this, then you're there. But I think that's not powerful enough for Legacy.
Well, no, you still need a sack outlet.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like, if it was legal in Modern, it'd be what I was looking for.
Yeah, and a source of value from triggers, right? It doesn't matter what the value is. It could be Proliferate for all I care, right? But it could be but something like along the lines of, like, if it's like, just for sake of argument, if it's like a Goblin Bombardment, it's both a source of damage and a sack outlet, right? That's like the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's the best of both worlds. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is there, but still thinking about that one. Another one, Liliana's Triumph, easy.
Easy.
I mean, there've been
super easy.
Yeah, there've been plenty of times where Edict is like good enough, right?
This is better than Edict.
And like, there's multiple unreal Lilianas that cost 3. So
this card is going to be fine wherever Lilianas are sold. And it's going to be great wherever Lilianas are sold, and it's going to be fine anyway.
Yeah. Yep. So that card is instant hit. Instant hit.
How many Lilianas are there in Standard? I mean, the 6 casting cost one, obviously.
There's a bunch of fake ones that are just unspeakably bad.
Like
that are like
pre-con Lilianas.
Yeah.
I'm not playing any of that.
Yep. Do you think any chance of Spark Harvest? Black, sorcery, destroy target creature or planeswalker, and then you have to, as an additional cost, either sacrifice a creature or pay 3 into black. And obviously you're aiming to sacrifice a creature. So it's black, sorcery, sacrifice a creature to destroy target creature or planeswalker. Because I can imagine some people wanting to play with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's fail state of sorcery speed, you know, like, I don't know, banishing for 4.
It's just people have played stuff like Bone Splinters, I guess in Standard, never Modern.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You really got me. You already said that. You just got to be in it for the sack output.
Yeah. Yep. So another possibility is Bolt Bend, 3 in a red, instant. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. So for 1 mana, you can frequently, but not always, you can frequently protect your Gurmag Angler or your Tasigur or your Tarmogoyf or your whatever, right? But it's got other applications besides just moving around targeted removal. You can also disrupt some combo decks and counter spells. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting.
I mean, this is a great solution to, you know, big end game spells, you know, in the Banefire or Expansion Explosion category, right? I guess it depends how they're casting some of them, but like and I think that at 4 mana, which is its bad version, 4 mana instant, it's still going to see some action, right? Because you don't always have the riches of a big enough creature, but you know, when this card is great, you know, the opponent will often be paying far more than 4 mana in order to get that effect that you're going to steal.
Mm-hmm. And I just think in Modern it's so easy to get something down that costs 1 or 2 mana that makes the condition true.
Oh, I think that decks that have like Tarmogoyf for Primeval Titan, stuff like that, will very, very often just be sideboarding this. It's awesome. It's kind of like a gutter ball. Like, I mean, even if you were just like, I guess this is a little cart before the horse, but like you can flip like a Thoughtseize with this, can't you?
You can. You can also target. You can choose. You can change the target of abilities, which is kind of an interesting thing. So, like for instance, if you're playing Legacy, you can change their Wasteland from hitting your land to hit theirs.
Oh, wow! If
you're playing some sort of a deck with like Tarmogoyfs or whatever.
Is so awesome with like Death's Shadow.
Could be. You know, obviously it protects Death's Shadow somewhat, but like. I think you got to value the amount of incidental weirdness of like, I stole your Become Immense or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the 2-for-1-ness of this card is probably going to be just plenty, and then it just has an enormously high ceiling.
It's going to have some blind spots in a lot of spaces, though. So I do think it's very possible that Modern could line up, and there's lots of ways Modern could line up where this card's actually just slightly awkward and just not as reliable as like Stubborn Denial or something. But the fact that it's not blue is a huge key selling point. So I would be particularly interested in this in decks. Like, for instance, I think Primeval Titan, you hit the nail on the head. But, you know, in decks that don't already have access to Stubborn Denial.
I mean, like, Red Robots, Eldrazi.
Well, this is really good with stuff like if you're playing one of those weird decks that uses like, you know, Glorybringer or Stormbreath Dragon or Thundermaw Hellkite or any of the big dumb red green land destruction monsters or whatever.
See, I was thinking like if you combine this with Cranial Plating or just like Reality Smasher. Right, how good is this card with Reality Smasher?
How good is this card with Simian Spirit Guide, man? Surprise! Boom!
Oh, yeah, I agree. Anyway, point being, I think that Bolt Bend is going to have a long and outstanding career and probably never get the recognition it deserves. It's going to be like the Lamar Odom of cards from War of the Spark. It's like not even rare, right? Like plays on the bench, won 2 or 3 championships. Lamar Odom, Bolt Bend.
Okay. I think Chandra Fire Artesian is just too much worse than other 4-cost Chandras.
For Modern specifically, right?
For Modern specifically.
Because it's
a good card.
Standard, I think.
It is. It's a good card. It's too much worse than that for what Modern is about.
Yeah. Even the plus one on it the first turn is probably going to do nothing, right? All it's just going to do is add a loyalty.
What do you think of Dreadhorde Arcanist?
I think that card is probably very powerful, but only in a deck that is highly designed to take advantage of it. So if you've got that card alongside, your
Lightning Bolt, Serum Visions, etc.
One casting cost, awesome high impact spell. Awesome and high impact for one casting cost spells. Not power level of a Nexus of Fate, right? That's a 7 casting cost spell, right? So, but if you have that alongside this card, it's just a cheaper, hyper mana efficient Ophidian, which I think is really, really a high amount of praise. But if you're just going to play it in a deck that has good spells that isn't necessarily designed around exploiting it with Dreadhorde Arcanist, it will be very medium.
And you don't want to use this in some sort of a weird, Become Immense deck, right?
I think that it is exciting to use it in a weird Become Immense deck only insofar that you might be able to cheat an enormously expensive spell. But I'm not sure. See, I think that's a lot of things to load on to the little Dreadhorde Arcanist and expect it to live. You're all right, I've got some awesome thing, and it's waiting for the Arcanist who now has Trample, and he's going to be +6, and it's going to be so exciting, and I'm going to take an extra turn or something like that. But at the end of the day, he's a 1/3, right? Everybody can kill a 1/3 who wants to kill a 1/3. It's way better off in a situation where it's just Inquisition to Kozilek, Dreadhorde Arcanist, Lightning Bolt that thing, in Inquisition you again. The fact that it's casting sorcery speed cards at instant speed is also a plus. I think it's a really, really cool card.
Okay, what about Finale of Promise? X-Red sorcery. You may cast up to one target instant and or one target sorcery card from your graveyard, each with converted mana cost X or less without paying their mana costs. If a card cast this way would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead, and if X is 10 or more, copy each of those spells twice. You may choose new targets. So the straight up, you can just spend 2 mana to regrow one of your Restore Balance, Living End, Ancestral Vision types. Right, and if you're self-milling a lot for a Living End deck, that might be particularly attractive. But if you're using it a little bit more fair, you could have some amount of that action possibly, but you can also just, for 3 mana, copy a Serum Vision and a Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that people are talking about on social media about this card is just recycling Lightning Bolt type cards, and I thought it was inefficient for that purpose. I actually,
well, I don't know. It's better than Electrolyze there, right?
I mean, you will have had to do a bunch of setup, and I think that
yeah. I don't mean that to be your upside. I mean that to be your fail state. If that's really your fail state, that's pretty good. If that's your dream, that's pretty lame.
I think the decks that have those kind of cards, one of the things that makes them viable is their ability to act in a way that doesn't require a lot of setup. And so if you're creating a situation where you get a much higher ceiling, but you have to do more setup, that's just every deck. Every deck that isn't you. And so I don't know. I don't find this card to be particularly exciting from that perspective, but maybe I'm wrong because you're probably right about the zeros.
Well, remember, you can also, if you're playing some kind of let's say you're playing one of those Grixis decks that uses As Foretold and your X-Spell from the last set.
Electric Dominance.
Electric Dominance. If you've already got Faithless Looting and Izzet Charm and possibly even Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, it's not inconceivable to think you could loot away your 0 in Finale of Promise, right? Turn 1 Faithless Looting, loot away a 0, turn 2 Finale of Promise.
Oh, and then you're just balancing them on the spot?
Or whatever you're doing, because remember, you can cast 2 things. So if you Faithless Looting away 2 things, you could play them both if you want, if one's an instant and one's a sorcery.
Oh, that's cool.
Now, you need to, I don't think any of the zeros are instants, But you can play packs, and if you had like a Simian Spirit Guide where you spent 3 mana, you could have one of them be, you're getting your sorcery, you're getting your like Ancestral Vision for the sorcery, and your instant is just merely a lightning bolt or something. I don't know. It's probably not doing enough to use a...
I mean, I think like the scenario that you described almost requires the Faithless Looting to get you your action, because otherwise you could have just Electro Dominance the same situation, right? Like, am I wrong about that? It's fine. If that is the case, then you're getting redundancy on the RR. And you often will want to just play Faithless Looting anyway, because it's a powerful search spell that gets a card out of your hand, which might be good for balance.
What if you're just playing Vintage and you just have like Dark Ritual and Brainstorm and Time Walk and Ancestral Recall and Demonic Tutor and...
Oh, well, I mean, all bets are off. Like, I don't even know how that format works. Like, when we've played in the past, you're just like, no, if you cast this, you win the game. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to cast it for an advantage. And you're like, no. Next game. Stop it now.
What about Ilharg the Razeboar in Modern? So 3 red, 6/6 trample. When Ilharg the Razeboar attacks, you may put Grizzlebrand from your hand or Emrakul from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So you won't get the Annihilator trigger from Emrakul, but you'll attack for 21, which is pretty good. And you won't get to like with Grizzlebrand, you have to do all the card drawing in the middle of your attack phase, because that's not true, actually. No, you'll gain some life, and it's not until your end step that you actually put it back in your hand. So super, super dope with Grizzlebrand. And then what I was thinking is Ilharg the Razeboar is a legend. And a god for that matter, but it's a legend. And so like you can Goryo's Vengeance Ilharg.
So he's basically like a slow through the breach, right? Like very similar.
Yeah, but he's a through the breach that you can Goryo's Vengeance. Because if you Goryo's Vengeance him, then you are like if you Goryo's Vengeance him, then you get to play whatever the thing is from your hand, which may or may not be a legend or may or may not work with Goryo's Vengeance. Like, for instance, if it was Emrakul, you may not have the mana. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of different ways you could do it, potentially, but like...
I don't know. I think he's got some potential. I'm just trying to... just in the Goryo's Vengeance scenario, I'm just trying to imagine what creatures I have that I want to Ilharg that the Goryo's Vengeance wouldn't have worked with already. But I think that there's...
Well, any card that's in your hand. Because you may, at the time that you Faithless Looting, not have any stuff yet.
So he's just a redundancy. But he's also a through the breach. So the thing is that the fact that he's also a through the breach is pretty good.
Right.
Or if you just like had a way to give him haste, right? Like that might be good.
He's really good with Primeval Titan, you know?
Yeah, he's just faster. I mean, I don't know. Do you think like there's a reason to play him with like the new Fires of Yavimaya or the new Domri that could give him haste? And you just like...
not in Modern.
No, it's
maybe.
Standard. Like,
oh yeah, probably.
Then he's doing something real dumb.
So let me see. I think in Modern, Jaya Venerated Fire Mage is too bad.
I think that in any formats with 60 cards, Jaya Venerated Fire Mage is too dumb and too slow. Not impressed.
Is Krenko Tin Street Kingpin definitely a non-starter for Modern?
Probably. Just his casting cost is pretty prohibitive. But I think that he's not a non-starter for not Modern. He seems pretty... But
I'm just thinking, if you could pump him up a bunch so you were getting more than the sum of the parts... I don't know. He's a guy who would become immense.
I think like he works well in like the same kind of decks we were talking about with like Feather or the 10th District Legionnaire. Because like the same cards that you might be playing to buff those guys might be good for buffing him, and he's just an enormous benefit, even if he's in play for only one turn.
I think Samet Sprint is a possibility. Target creature gets +2/+1, a haste, and you scry 1. It's just a lot of stuff. Like giving your guy haste is already such a valuable thing, and the fact that you're getting 2 extra damage and you're scry 1ing, I just think there's enough stuff going on here that if you're playing certain types of bursty, like for instance, wouldn't you be interested in this card if you were playing one of those Kiln Fiend decks?
Sure, I think Samus Sprint and Krinko just together, that's like a fine combo of those two cards. Just probably not for Modern.
I forget Krinko. I'm talking about Samus Sprint in Modern in like some kind of a Kiln Fiend deck. You know, like some kind of...
I mean, there are already decks like that, right? Like the red-green haste deck.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that I think this one's good enough. I think this one's good enough that it's at least worth considering compared to some other pump spell options.
Yeah, +2/+1 for R is not horrible. And the Scry might be valuable.
But haste! Dude, 1 mana give your guy haste is like not that far from like a card you play sometimes.
Yeah, I could be convinced. I guess it's like almost like it's potentially like just adding 4 power, right? Like it doesn't have like as much oomph as some of the pump spells you might normally play, but the fact that you get in, like, you know, let's say you have a 4/4 or something, the fact that you get in a turn earlier might be super valuable.
Now, here's where the other shoe drops. I want my infect creature to get +2/+1 and haste and scry 1.
I mean, I'm not into that, but you know, what infect decks can summon an R?
Well, it's not like they're far off. The mana's easy.
That I don't know. I have never been on that side in Modern. So I'm not sure how willing they're going to go that direction, but it's certainly attractive. Anything that can turn a deck that normally has to wait a turn to win into a deck that can win immediately for 1 mana is pretty cool.
Plus, they were already interested in pump spells, right?
Yeah.
It's only 1 less than Giant Growth.
Well, if you said like, hey, I'm also giving you haste, that's a functionality they don't currently have. Like their current capability, the closest thing to haste is like an Inkmoth Nexus.
And I just think haste would be such a welcome addition to that strategy for those people. All right, what about Sarkhan the Masterless? Is this just impossible?
For
just
Modern, no way.
Yeah.
For Standard, he's gonna be a very solid player. But for Modern,
so here's what I was thinking in Modern. So people already play like Stormbreath Dragon.
And he's just better than Stormbreath Dragon, you're thinking.
Right, mostly. He's not just better, but I think he's good enough that, like, it's not out of the question to imagine that you would play this in one of those weird red, like mono-red land destruction decks or red-green land destruction decks.
Well, there was a deck that won a Classic last year that had the other Sarkhan, the 3 cast and cost Sarkhan that's currently legal in Standard, and then, like, Thunderbreak Regent. So I think, like, and then, like, Draconic Roar. I think that...
I don't think you need to build around dragons that much. I mean, you could if you wanted, but I really think you want to just be in for, I'm playing some weird red or red-green deck that just wants to have a reliable, powerful top end.
I actually think that being in for dragons might be attractive because if you have that Sarkhan the Fireblood on turn 3, for sake of argument, like Sarkhan the Masterless is +1, is like extremely attractive if you already have Planeswalkers in play. And
That's true.
The thing that is a big problem for a lot of these, like, I don't even know what you want to call it.
They play Chandra anyway.
Or they could play Koth, like that at 4. The problem is, like, they tend to be able to set up a pretty good game.
Tibble!
But they can't win fast enough. So, like, they're like, oh, man, I'm ahead. And then their opponent just does something dumb. Like, make you sacrifice every non-colorless card or something like that. So, just, like, getting 4 or 8 points of impact in that you weren't otherwise going to do, like, that's pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
And that's very Stormbreath Dragon-ish, right, if you think about it, right? Like, you're getting 4 points of attack in for 5 mana.
Totally agree. What do you think of Arboreal Grazer? Green for a 1/2 reach. When it enters the battlefield, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Sorry, it's a 0/3 reach. So if you're playing this in some sort of a Amulet Titan deck.
I'm not into it.
You don't buy it?
Yeah, I'm not into it. It seems like it's a bad combination of low power and inconsistent for me.
Okay. Like weren't they already playing like the 1-cost 1/1 version? Sometimes?
Yeah, but doesn't that one, like, can't be used more than once?
No, I thought they were just playing. I mean, the one that taps, you're right, yeah.
Yeah, like you could, like if you can do it on demand, then you can get benefit from the trigger on a Simic growth chamber or something. And this guy, you can't really do that. Like, she's just going to hit, drop, and then, all right, it's in play. I guess I upgraded a land. Go.
Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi with Inkmoth Nexus.
I think that is exciting. I'm wondering, does an Infect deck ever really have 7 mana? Right, like when you want it is like you're already attacking with an Inkmoth Nexus. They haven't blocked, and then
you could do it at 6. When you have 6 and your opponent passes the turn, on your opponent's end step, you could tap your Nexus to power itself up, give it the counters, untap, pay a mana.
Get him.
Actually, you don't even have to pay the mana. Oh yeah, you do. You want to pay the mana so that it becomes a 10/10 instead of a 9/9. Yeah, but it's only a 9/9 until you pay the mana. Then it's a 10/10.
But it doesn't have Infect naturally, right? It has Infect only if it's a creature.
Right, so you pay the mana.
Yeah, so I think, like, one time that you want this is, like, you're already attacking, and then, the coast is clear, and then you just pour 5 more into it. But, like, that seems real ambitious. And I think, like, I don't know, do you think the Hardened Scales deck will ever want this?
No, it's too slow. But, like, I'm picturing some sort of a Primeval Titan deck. And, like, you just have this, like I don't know what it looks like, but if you were to imagine some deck that just had Inkmoth Nexus and this card and played lots of land and had a different primary combo kill, but I don't know. It's probably bad, but it jumps out at me. What about Bond of Flourishing, man?
Into it. Because everything I want.
Oh, sure. Yeah, because it does seem like it's pretty good, but not great at a variety. Man, there's just so many cards in this set. We're going to have to pick this back up because we haven't even got to Nicol Bolas and the gold cards. But, dude, this set is crazy. I am excited for the year in Magic if this is any indication of of things to come.
But at the same time, we never miss the opportunity to mention Nicol Bolas, the Dragon God.
Dude, Nicol Bolas seems so dope. I played him, actually. I was gunslinging at the PT, and I was playing Grixis, but I just played 2 for my gunslinging and just put 2 Nicol Bolases in, and the card was dope.
I mean, that whole they got and you go up at the same time is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Well, awesome, dude. I'll see you next week, man.
All right. Night, Patrick.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber state.